Hello, everyone. I'm Marlene Foster with Empower Division, and I have with me today Peter Abrahamsen. And Peter has actually been spotlighted, two other times, and the audience have always enjoyed hearing from Peter. And so I thought it would be a good idea to actually reach out and invite him. He's an author because we've never really spoken, much about his published writings. So today we're going to talk about his profession, how his life connects with that, and we're going to talk about his writings. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much, Marlene. Great to be back and talk to you again. I always enjoy our conversations.
You're so much. But Peter, tell everybody where you're from, first of all. Where are you?
Okay, I am actually from Denmark. So right now, it's fun fact, I'm 60 years old, but I have lived half my life now in the UK, in England. I went out on a one-way ticket because I thought that was great for my career. I just graduated from Copenhagen Business School as a translator and interpreter, and thought I wanted to live in the country where the language is spoken. So like all young, naive people, I thought, yeah, I'm going to live right in the center of London because that's where things happen. So I never did that. I first got a job in Ireland, and with that company, half a year later, moved to the UK. And I've never lived in London, and I'm quite happy about that. But I live just outside, so it's an easy train ride into London if I want to go there, and it's an easy train drive out again when I don't want to be there. So I'm here. I am staying. People ask, "Well, I'm not going back to Denmark." I say, "Well, if it makes sense." And so far it hasn't made sense. So this is my life. This is where I am. My career has now spanned more than 40 years, from being the most junior to somewhere in the middle to being the most senior. I've had my own business from time to time when I got fired and had to do something to put food on the table. I could do some freelance work, and then I got hired again. So from translation into project management, into change management, and then I ended up spending 18 years as a supply chain consultant, fixing factories and warehouses. And in the middle of all of this, I decided I needed to know more why I got all this resistance when I was introducing change. So I got myself a degree in psychology, and I picked up a couple of diplomas in coaching, personal coaching and executive coaching. I never used that for anything other than extra strings to my bow working as a consultant. And whilst my colleagues were the ones with the numbers and the data and all the, what is unfortunately called the hard skills, I was the soft skills person, the people person. And people are the hardest thing to deal with ever. A machine, you can turn around, you can tune it up and down, you can do whatever you want with it, and it responds, hopefully. But people are individuals. They will not respond to treatment, if you like, in the same way. You can do the best thing, you can communicate the best you want. There's always something with things you didn't do well enough.
Excuse me, Peter, why psychology? Why did you pursue psychology, and why coaching? Was there a reason? Was something that occurred in your life that impacted?
There was a reason, which I didn't realize until I started changing into psychology. So let me try and unravel that one. Later in my career, I looking back, I always realized that I was more interested in the people I worked with than what I was hired to actually do. So translation, that was okay, but I was more interested in the well-being of my colleagues and not my bosses and all that stuff. And I just thought, okay, well, it was just one of those things. It was just the way it was. But if you read the chapter I wrote in this book called Transforming Your Life, Volume 3, there's a passage which says, I was born in 1961, but I learned to live in 1993. So that means I actually lived with, I wouldn't say I suffered from, but I lived with a depression from about age 5. And it just grew and grew and grew. And life was a chore. It was horrible. It was boring. I never enjoyed it really, because you don't when you're depressed. And I got to the point where I thought, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to take my own life. So what drove me, among other things, to that point was perfectionism. And when you are so far into perfectionism, you can never be happy with yourself. And I wasn't. So I got to the point where I knew the place and the time and the method, but I then took a step back mentally and physically, yes, and decided I did not want to be accused of not having tried everything. So I put the suicide on hold. I didn't give up on the idea, but I went and found another psychologist. The first one I'd seen made no difference. But the second one, she used a different method, CBT, and I was ready to fly solo after 8 sessions. And that sort of changed something in me. And I thought, wow, what an impact that woman had on me. So I created this picture of myself which says, if I can have made such a positive impact on just one person's life, I will be dying a happy man. So I went and did that. Okay, and I did it again and again. And gradually, although I was doing other things, this idea about practicing as a psychologist and as a coach just grew and grew. But I didn't change career. I added things to my CV, if you like, to my skills base, and then eventually worked out that I don't want to do this as an aside whilst I'm fixing pallet racking somewhere and redesigning a warehouse. I want to do this full time because that is what makes me want to get up in the morning. So in 2018, I published this book called Break Down Your Emotional Brick Wall, because by then I had started my own company called Better Lives, where I offered coaching and counseling on the side. So I was still in employment, but I was transitioning gradually. I was finding an out. I wanted a second income, but I was more and more interested in what I did, just focusing on people, not having to think about ROIs and weight loading and all that stuff that you think about when you're dealing with factories and warehouses. So it grew more and more, and I wrote a book which was actually just 10 steps. I think it's 10 steps, can't remember, about what you can do for yourself. 7 steps. but
Peter, out of the book, from the book, what's the step you think? If you want to give us 3 major ones, what would you say that the major steps you feel, if you could tell the audience today?
The major steps that I point out in this one is really the same. Seek help. If that doesn't work, find some other help. If that doesn't work, don't give up. Keep looking for help until you find it. And that is also the theme in the chapter I wrote for this book, where I explain my childhood and everything else. Perfectly good childhood, safe and loving and all that stuff. But I was depressed because I thought my parents were having a fight. They weren't, they were just discussing something. But when you're 5 years old, you can get things wrong. And I thought, if mom and dad are unhappy, which I thought they were, it must be my fault. And then I became the good boy. And that is where the perfectionism started to creep in, because I didn't want bad grades at school. I didn't want to get into fights. So I held myself back. Nobody did this to me. I just got an idea wrong in my head, and it snowballed from there gradually to me having suicidal ideation for years, hating waking up every morning, not having killed myself the day before. So it wasn't a life worth living, which is why I said I was born in 61, but learned to live in 1993.
Putting suicidal thoughts on hold, because you didn't make an attempt until your early 30s, correct?
No, I didn't put the suicidal thought on hold. I put the suicide on hold because I was convinced that the world would be a better place without me. I just did not want to be criticized after my death for having not tried everything. So that was the perfectionism that drove me there, but it also saved me.